In the spring of 2025, a shockwave rippled across North America as decades of peaceful trade ties between the United States and Canada suddenly snapped. The world watched as a simmering dispute erupted into a full-blown trade war, catching businesses, families, and entire communities off guard. At the heart of the crisis was the Alaska Highway, a vital artery stretching through breathtaking wilderness, now transformed overnight into a geopolitical flashpoint. What began as political posturing between leaders quickly spiraled out of control. Checkpoints sprang up, trucks idled for days, and the threat of a total blockade loomed, putting Alaska's only land connection to the lower 48 states in jeopardy. The spark? Former President Trump's announcement of a sweeping 25% tariff on Canadian goods. The move was met with outrage in Ottawa, where Canadian officials wasted no time in crafting a forceful response. British Columbia's government retaliated by proposing to turn the Alaska Highway into a toll road, a move that would give them unprecedented control over Alaska's main supply route. Suddenly, every truck, every shipment, and every traveler face new uncertainty and potential costs. For Alaskans, these routes are more than just roads, they are lifelines. With the threat of blockades or crippling fees, families worried about empty shelves, businesses braced for shortages, and communities questioned how long their supplies would last. The impact rippled outward, hitting not just trucking, but also tourism, small businesses, and the interconnected economies of the Pacific Northwest. Hotels emptied, visitor centers closed, and the flow of goods slowed to a crawl. What started as a tariff threat has now become a crisis of access, sovereignty, and trust. Both nations are being forced to reconsider a relationship that once seemed unbreakable. As negotiations grow tense and uncertainty mounts, the stakes could not be higher. The decisions made in the coming weeks will not only determine the fate of Alaska's supply lines, but could reshape the future of trade and cooperation across the entire continent. In March 2025, British Columbia struck back, passing the Economic Stabilization Tariff Response Act. The law empowers BC to impose steep tolls on commercial vehicles traveling between the lower 48 and Alaska, weaponizing the province's highways. Officials made clear this was economic self-defense, not a bluff. The tolls could be enforced almost instantly using existing way stations, making the threat real and immediate. Premier I also ordered a halt to American product purchases and banned liquor from Republican-less states, including Alaska. British Columbia's multi-pronged response signaled it was ready to retaliate on multiple fronts, escalating the conflict. The stage was set for a much larger showdown. British Columbia's move was just the opening salvo in a united Canadian response. Ontario imposed a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to the U.S., threatening higher utility bills for millions of Americans. The Yukon mirrored BC's liquor ban and shut American firms out of government contracts, showing solidarity even in the north. Prime Minister Trudeau's government prepared a sweeping list of retaliatory tariffs, ensuring a national front. Canada's provinces and federal government formed a wall of economic deterrence, making clear they would not be passive targets. The trade war had become a truly continental standoff. For Alaska's 730,000 residents, the trade war is an immediate threat, not a distant drama. Here, the consequences of international disputes are felt in everyday life. From the grocery store to the gas pump, Alaska's unique geography means that its people are more vulnerable than most to disruptions far beyond their control. While most cargo arrives by sea, the land routes through Canada are essential for fresh food and urgent supplies. These highways and border crossings are Alaska's arteries, keeping the state connected to the rest of the U.S. and the world. Without them, even basic necessities become difficult to obtain, and delays can quickly spiral into shortages. Any disruption could mean empty shelves and soaring prices, hitting Alaskan families hardest. For many, the fear of not finding essentials is becoming a reality. Parents worry about feeding their children, and seniors on fixed incomes struggle to keep up with rising costs. Alaska's oil, gas, and tourism industries also depend on these routes. Energy exports fuel the state's economy, while tourism brings in billions each year. Both sectors are now at risk, threatening jobs and livelihoods across the region. The cruise industry, reliant on Canadian ports, faces chaos if the standoff continues. Alaska's politicians have threatened to bypass Canadian ports entirely, recalling the devastating impact of a similar move during the pandemic. That decision led to lost revenue, shuttered businesses, and widespread uncertainty. The result, mutual threats of economic destruction with tourism, now another battleground. Tensions are rising and both sides are digging in, unwilling to back down as livelihoods hang in the balance. The state's connection to the rest of the country hangs in the balance. Every truck, ship, and plane that enters or leaves Alaska is now a symbol of the state's fragile lifeline. The crisis is no longer theoretical. It's reshaping daily life. Alaskans are adapting, but the uncertainty remains as the state waits to see what the next day will bring. Former President Trump responded with his trademark fury, blasting Canada in a series of fiery statements. He labeled Prime Minister Trudeau and Canada as aggressors. At rallies and online, Trump framed the dispute as a direct attack on American sovereignty, vowing, "Not on my watch," to cheering crowds. Trump's rhetoric ignored Canada's response to his own tariffs, instead painting the crisis as entirely unprovoked and one-sided. He hinted at even harsher retaliation, fueling widespread fears of a dangerous escalation. The conflict quickly became both personal and political, with Trump's base demanding a hard line and no compromise. Alaska Governor Mike Dunleavy urged restraint, calling for national-level talks to protect his state's fragile economy. He warned that a full-blown trade war would devastate Alaskans, pushing for a diplomatic solution. In contrast, Canadian officials defended their actions as necessary self-protection, framing them as regulatory, not retaliatory. Prime Minister Trudeau balanced firmness with calls for negotiation, insisting Canada wouldn't be bullied, but leaving the door open for talks. Environmental and Indigenous rights were cited as additional justifications, complicating the narrative. The political climate, inflamed by Trump's rhetoric, left little room for compromise. The current crisis shines a spotlight on the legal gray zone surrounding the Alaska Highway, a vital route built as a joint project during World War II, but never formally guaranteed by any binding treaty. For decades, the highway has served as a lifeline connecting remote communities, a symbol of cooperation between the United States and Canada. Yet its legal status has always been ambiguous, leaving it vulnerable to disputes and shifting political winds. Canada's sovereign control over its roads gives it the legal right to impose tolls or restrictions, even after years of informal cross-border cooperation. The sudden assertion of sovereignty can feel jarring, especially for those who see the highway as a shared resource. Only genuine diplomacy built on open dialogue and mutual respect can restore the trust and stability that both nations and their people so desperately need. As the world watches, the question remains, can these longtime allies find common ground and reaffirm their partnership, or will they allow this crisis to drive them further apart?